why I took him. And it kind of even harkens back to our Brian Daboll conversation. I trust Sean Payton. I trust him offensively. I trust him to develop players. I think he's the type of guy that will milk the most out of whatever is given to him. So when you got a prospect like Mims that you said freakish, elite level athleticism that might need to get tailored a little bit, I think the perfect tailor is Sean Payton. He knows how to use these guys. He knows how to use the speed guys. He knows how to use all players, but especially, you think about like way back in the day, Devery Henderson, or like all these kind of like Kenny Stills, you know what I mean? Like these nobodies anywhere else have had these crazy seasons. And then you give him, a player like Mims, who, like you were just hitting at, second best prospect in this class, according to a lot of Barrett's metrics and models, a guy that 2,629 receiving yards his senior year in high school, the most in our nation's history. He's anchored passing attacks. Yeah, high school we're talking about, but that's still the most all-time Texas receiving yardage. Like Texas is a pretty impressive football state, and this guy just blew everybody else that's ever come from there out of the water. A demigod, seriously. He's been on. Maybe that's why everyone loves him so much, because he has been on a lot of people's radars for long. You look at NCAA yards per target since 2005. Power 5 only, minimum 100 targets. Number 1's Jalen Waddle, 15.1. 2 is Marvin Mims. The other guys on this list, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, Jamison Williams, Marquise Brown, Devonta Smith. Not a bad list of people to be among. I'm starting to regret, the more I think about this, like, oh, shit. But he had all these interesting metrics, because I read Barrett's breakdown. He's one of my go-to for Dynasty. So even if I couldn't necessarily fall in love with the player myself, a really smart guy like Scott pointed out all these great things. I do love Sean Payton. I don't love Russell Wilson, but the guy can throw moon bombs. So if he regains that form, you just kind of picture like a lot of Tyler Lockett comparisons here, and how much magic those two made together, and how often Sean Payton, if anyone's going to save Russ, it's Sean Payton. And even if not, like you're saying, he might be the number one guy here. I also don't love – people love Judy. I don't know. I'm not sold on Judy at all as this long-term guy.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I love him, but he's like I can see him being the alpha still.
He could be, but honestly, it's within the realm of possibilities. Sutton's gone next year. Judy's just not as good as everybody thinks, and Mims blows it up as a rookie, and then suddenly they're number one. Like that's all within the range of outcomes. So, and that's often what happens with these young receiver prospects is you can string these narratives. And it's not even just I really do believe in Sean Payton. So you string all those in your own head as I'm there on 2-9. I'm like, whether I end up benefiting from this or whether this is the type of piece that is a good movable, you can string that narrative. You can string that narrative in a trade talk too. So it also works out that like I wouldn't be able to necessarily say any of those things about Tank Bigsby. As interesting as mixing in with Travis Etienne there, he was the projected guy I should have taken there. It's capped that he's only going to go so far. Whereas Mims, especially before he's even taken an NFL field, and certainly as we see more about him, that narrative can continue to get spun and spun and spun. And so I thought at worst, I'm getting a good asset. At best, maybe he stays on my team and he becomes this, again, Jalen Waddle, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, Jamison Willie, like the guys he's got his metrics lining up with are pretty damn impressive. So maybe he becomes that. And then I look like whether Lance works out or not, if he becomes anything similar to those guys, you really didn't lose this trade no matter what. So I think it definitely buoyed it out for you in that sense.
Well, I think Lance has to become something in order for me to W with this trade. But
if Mims became Jalen Waddle or Jamar Chase, I don't know that you necessarily lose. Just CeeDee Lamb, like if he becomes that level of receiver, and if anyone's going to make him that level of receiver, it would be Sean Payton. Like obviously, I don't think he necessarily does because I wouldn't have traded him away if I felt. But there is that ceiling narrative, which is why at 209, like ultimately, who had a better ceiling than him? Nobody. Nobody came even close in terms of what I was looking at that point of the draft. So I had to go Mims.
To be fair, I think when I think of